My girlfriend posted, "Toxic trait. Dating a man who peaked in high school," with a photo of my old football jersey. I commented, "Toxic trait. Dating someone you're embarrassed by." Then I packed her things and left them on her sister's porch. When her sister called me and said, "Honestly, fair enough. I 28 male-owned and run an independent HVAC and plumbing business. I did not go to a fancy university. I graduated high school, got my state certifications, and have spent the last decade crawling under humid foundations and climbing onto scorching roofs. It pays exceptionally well, but it is far from glamorous work. My now ex-girlfriend is a digital marketing coordinator for a boutique commercial real estate firm. She wears blazers, attends expensive networking mixers, and cares deeply about optics and how things look to the outside world. I, on the other hand, care about whether a commercial compressor is blowing cold air. We have been dating for just over 2 years. She practically lived at my house, though her official legal address, driver license, and mail were all tied to sister's apartment across town. Girlfriend kept it that way because sister lived in a zip code with significantly cheaper car insurance rates. It was a completely normal Saturday afternoon. I was cleaning out the hall closet, sorting through plastic bins to find some old winter gear to donate. I pulled out my old varsity football jersey from our state championship run back in the day. I had not looked at the thing in years. I tossed it onto the kitchen island, intending to throw it in the wash before packing away in a vacuum bag. I went out to the driveway to load the donation boxes into my truck. I was outside for maybe 20 minutes. I came back in, grabbed a glass of water, and sat on the couch. I opened Instagram. The very first thing on my feed was a fresh reel from Girlfriend. The video was a slow pan over my old football jersey sitting on the granite countertop. The text overlay read, "Toxic trait. Dating a man who peaked in high school." The audio she chose was a trending sound of someone laughing sarcastically. She had already racked up a few hundred likes and a dozen comments from her friends, mostly skull emojis and comments like, "OMG, so true." I sat there. I just stared at the screen. She was upstairs in my shower, getting ready for a bottomless brunch with her co-workers. She was living in a house I paid a mortgage on, eating food I bought, driving a car I fixed for free, and broadcasting to the entire internet that I was some washed-up loser because I wore a tool belt instead of a custom suit. I did not storm upstairs. I did not yell or throw things. I simply tapped the comment button on her post and typed, "Toxic trait. Dating someone you're embarrassed by." Then I put my phone in my pocket. I walked to the garage and grabbed a stack of heavy-duty cardboard boxes and a roll of packing tape. I went to the guest bedroom she used as her vanity and dressing room. I systematically packed her entire existence. Makeup, clothes, shoes, hair tools. I did not damage a single thing. I folded her dresses neatly. I wrapped her expensive perfumes in towels so they would not break. It took me exactly an hour and 45 minutes to box up every trace of her from my home. She came downstairs wrapped in a towel, looking for her phone charger. She stopped dead at the bottom of the stairs, looking at the 6 tape boxes stacked by the front door. She asked what those were. I told her it was her things, and that I was dropping them off at sister's house. Her face went pale and then flushed red. She asked if I was serious, claiming I was being ridiculously sensitive over a simple joke on social media. I told her I was not being sensitive at all. I told her I was just agreeing with her. I said she shouldn't date a guy who peaked in high school and that she was officially free to go find a corporate guy who met her standards. I did not wait for her to get dressed or argue. I loaded the truck, backed out the driveway, and drove 20 minutes across town to sister's duplex. I stacked the boxes neatly on the covered porch. As I was setting down the last box, my phone rang. It was sister. Sister's voice was totally flat. She told me Girlfriend had just called her hyperventilating, saying I had completely lost my mind and thrown her out on the street. I told sister her stuff was on the porch and that none of it was damaged. I expected a massive screaming match. I braced myself for the protective sibling rage that usually follows these things. There was a long pause on the line. I heard sister sigh, a heavy, exhausted sound. "Honestly," sister said, "fair enough. She told me she saw the post, and that girlfriend had been acting like a pretentious nightmare for months. Sister just told me not to let her back in, warning me that if I caved, girlfriend would never respect me again. I told her I had absolutely no intention of caving. We hung up. I drove back to an empty, quiet house. I thought the worst of it was over, and we would just go our separate ways. I had no idea the absolute circus she was about to unleash. Sunday morning, my phone was a brick of notifications. Girlfriend had sent 84 text messages overnight. They ranged from apologies to absolute fury, gaslighting to legal threats. She demanded I let her back in. She claimed she was a legal tenant and that I had committed an illegal eviction. At 10 in the morning, a police cruiser pulled into my driveway. Girlfriend was parked right behind them in her sedan. She had called in a civil standby, telling the dispatcher I had stolen her belongings and locked her out of her own legal residence. I walked out to Porch. The officer approached, looking incredibly bored. Girlfriend was standing behind him, arms crossed, looking incredibly smug. The officer told me this young lady claimed she resided here and that I had illegally locked her out. I calmly explained to the officer that she did not live here. I told him she stayed over frequently, but her legal residence was with sister. She started yelling that she had clothes here and that her dog's bowls were in the kitchen. I told the officer I had packed all her property and returned it to her legal address yesterday. Under our state law, establishing tenancy requires her to receive official mail at the residence, have it on her state-issued ID, or have occupied the residence for 30 consecutive days without another primary domicile. I explained she used the sister's address for her license, her voter registration, and her car insurance to avoid my zip code's higher premiums. I stated she was a guest and her visitation privileges had been permanently revoked. The officer turned to her and asked if her ID was registered to this address. She stammered and said no. The officer asked if she received official postal mail here. She stammered again and said no. The officer plainly told her this was a civil matter, and she had no established right of entry. He told her if I wanted her off the property, she needed to leave immediately. He added that if she believed she was still owed property, she would have to take me to small claims court. Her smugness vanished instantly. She glared at me with absolute venom, got in her car, and sped off. The officer tipped his hat and left. I went back inside and sat at my home office desk. I woke up my desktop computer to check my business emails for the upcoming week. When I opened the browser, a WhatsApp web tab refreshed automatically. Girlfriend used my desktop occasionally when her work laptop was running updates. She had left her account logged in. I was not looking to snoop, but the top conversation was a group chat titled Next Moves, featuring her and a guy named Co-Worker. Co-Worker was a senior broker at her firm. He drove a Porsche. He was exactly the kind of guy she thought she deserved. I clicked the chat. I started scrolling. My blood ran completely cold. The social media post wasn't just a stupid joke. It was a signal to him. She had been texting Co-Worker for weeks about how embarrassing my job was and how she was handling the transition to leave me. But it was the messages from Thursday afternoon that made my jaw clench. Co-Worker had messaged her asking if the capital had cleared yet, saying they needed to lock down the lease on a downtown office space by Friday, or they would lose a deposit for their new PR venture. Girlfriend replied that it was almost done. She told him the digital lender needed extra verification because of my lack of credit history outside of the business. She literally wrote that she had sent them my personal tax returns and that I should be approved for $45,000 by Monday. I froze. I immediately opened a new tab and logged into my credit monitoring service. There, glaring at me in bright red text, was a recent hard inquiry from a high-risk online lending group. It was an application for a $45,000 personal loan. She was not just cheating on me emotionally or setting up a new life with another guy. She was using my social security number, which she had access to because I let her help file my personal taxes last year, to secure a loan to start a side hustle PR firm with Co-Worker. She was going to dump me and leave me saddled with a massive debt while she rode off into sunset. I immediately called the fraud department of the online lender. I spent 2 solid hours on the phone verifying my identity, locking down my credit with all 3 major bureaus, and freezing the loan application. The bank confirmed the loan had been conditionally approved and was just waiting for a final digital signature to disburse the funds. I flagged it as severe identity theft. She must have received an email notification that the application was frozen. An hour later, she realized she couldn't access her WhatsApp on her phone either, because I had forcefully logged out all devices from the web portal. She knew that I knew everything. This is when her entitlement shifted into desperate, incredibly dirty tactics. Tuesday afternoon, I was at a commercial job site when I got an urgent call from a lawyer, a guy who plays in my Wednesday night recreational basketball league. The lawyer told me I needed to get to my house right now. He had just been in the county clerk's office filing paperwork for another client, and he saw my ex-girlfriend filing an ex parte temporary restraining order against me. I asked him what he meant. He explained it was a temporary protective order. She had submitted a sworn affidavit claiming I had a history of violent outbursts, that I had physically thrown her out of the house, and that she was terrified for her life. But the real kicker was that she requested exclusive use of the residence as part of the order. I felt a tight knot form in my chest. This is a notorious tactic. In my state, an ex parte order is granted based solely on the applicant's testimony to ensure immediate safety. The judge signs it, you get served, and you have to vacate your own home immediately until a formal hearing can take place, which is usually scheduled about a week later. She was trying to legally force me out of my own house so she could move back in. I realized she needed to intercept any mailed documents from the bank to complete the loan fraud, or maybe she just wanted to punish me. The lawyer told me to meet him at my house and to pack a bag immediately. I rushed home and beat the process server by about 20 minutes. I grabbed a duffel bag, packed a week's worth of clothes, my important business documents, my passport, and my external hard drive. Just as I was zipping up the bag in the living room, a sheriff's deputy pulled into the driveway. I walked out to meet him. He handed me the paperwork. I accepted the papers peacefully. As of that exact second, I was legally barred from entering my own property or contacting her in any way. I got in my truck and drove away while the deputy watched. I checked into a local motel. I sat down with a lawyer that night in the dingy room. I handed him a printed stack of the WhatsApp logs, the credit inquiry report, and the IP address history from my home router. The router logs clearly showed her laptop accessing the loan site using my home Wi-Fi on Friday morning, before the whole Jersey incident even happened. Lawyer shook his head. He told me she had perjured herself on a sworn affidavit to get the house. He looked at the loan documents and said this wasn't just a civil issue. This was federal wire fraud and felony identity theft. I told him I didn't just want the house back. I told him I wanted her to feel the full, crushing weight of every single choice she made this week. While I was stuck at the motel, she did not stop. She used her professional marketing skills to run a coordinated smear campaign. She contacted 3 of my mid-sized commercial clients. She knew their names from seeing my invoices on my desk. She sent them emails from her personal account, claiming she was a victim of severe domestic abuse and warning them about doing business with a volatile person. 2 of them called me, very confused and concerned. I calmly explained the situation was a pending legal dispute regarding a fraudulent loan and asked them to please hold off on any judgments for just 1 week. She truly thought she had won. She thought I was just a dumb blue-collar guy who peaked in high school, too ignorant to fight back against her corporate intellect. She was very wrong. The hearing to dissolve the temporary restraining order was set for the following Monday morning. I walked into the courtroom with lawyer. Girlfriend was sitting at the petitioner's table. She wore a conservative beige dress, playing the part of the fragile, terrified victim perfectly. Co-worker was actually sitting in the gallery behind her, wearing a custom-tailored suit, looking at me with thinly veiled amusement. The judge called the case. Girlfriend took the stand. She squeezed out a few tears, repeating the exact lies from her affidavit. She claimed I was volatile, that I had violently thrown her things into the street, and that she desperately needed the house to feel safe. Then it was the lawyer's turn to cross-examine her. Lawyer asked her directly if she resided at my address. She sniffled and said yes. Lawyer immediately produced a police report from the Sunday civil standby, complete with a body cam footage transcript, where she clearly admitted to the officer she did not receive mail or have an ID at my address. He submitted it to the judge. Lawyer then pivoted. He noted that she claimed she was terrified of me and simply wanted a safe place to live. He then asked her if it was true that she had spent the last week actively trying to secure a $45,000 loan, using my stolen Social Security number. Her face completely froze. The color drained from her cheeks. In the gallery, co-worker shifted very uncomfortably in his seat. Her appointed legal aide sputtered and objected, claiming relevance. Lawyer fired right back, stating it went directly to credibility and motive. He told the judge the petitioner was abusing the court's protective order process not for safety, but to gain access to my home to intercept financial mail regarding a fraudulent loan application she initiated. The lawyer handed the judge the WhatsApp transcripts, the Wi-Fi IP logs matching her devices at my house, and the credit freeze confirmation from the bank. The judge adjusted his glasses and read through the documents. The silence in the courtroom was absolutely suffocating. You could hear a pin drop. The judge finally looked up, and his expression was hardened. The judge looked right at her. His voice was like cracking ice. He asked her point blank if she forged my signature on a financial document. She panicked completely. She started stammering that we were a partnership and that the money was for our future. The judge snapped that this was not what her text messages to co-workers suggested. He slammed his gavel. He stated the temporary order was dissolved immediately and that I was granted full access to my property. Before dismissing us, he looked at her and highly suggested she retain criminal defense counsel immediately. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I just packed up my briefcase. Girlfriend looked completely shattered, staring blankly at the table. I glanced back and saw a co-worker practically sprinting out of the courtroom doors to distance himself from the disaster. But I was not done. The moment we left the courthouse, I drove straight to the local police precinct. I bypassed the standard patrol desk and asked to speak directly to the financial crimes detective. I handed him the neatly organized tab binder lawyer, and I had prepared. It was a clear-cut, fully documented case of 18 U.S.C. Section 1028, identity theft, complete with IP logs, bank records, and her own written admissions. The next morning, lawyer drafted a vicious cease and desist letter regarding the tortious interference with my business clients. We did not just send it to girlfriend. We sent it directly to the managing partner of her commercial real estate firm via certified mail. We included undeniable proof that she had used company time and company email servers to orchestrate a fraudulent loan with co-worker. The fallout was absolute and immediate. On Thursday, she and co-worker were both unceremoniously fired from the firm. The company wanted absolutely zero liability regarding their employees committing federal financial fraud on company time. 2 weeks later, I was finishing up a massive commercial installation for a new restaurant downtown when I got a call from the detective. They had officially executed an arrest warrant. Girlfriend was pulled over in traffic and taken into custody for felony identity theft and forgery. She is currently out on bail, living in sister's cramped spare bedroom, facing potential prison time and thousands in legal fees. She has a public defender because she no longer has any income to hire a private one. I went back to my house that same afternoon. I unpacked my duffel bag. The house was quiet, clean, and entirely mine. I did not feel a massive wave of triumph or a need to celebrate. I just felt a deep, settling peace. I realized that keeping your head down, working hard, and maintaining your integrity isn't peaking in high school. It is just being a responsible adult.